And if I were a guy posting about finance or investing, I wouldn't get this. But because I'm a girl and I post about this, I get this. Assuming that I can't even pay my own bills or my own rent because a man must do that for me. That goes to my value of female empowerment. And I just get really annoyed.
Hey friends, welcome back to the channel to Tech Club, the ongoing series where I review tech and apps and other products.
This is Digital Voices.
I see myself as a lifestyle content creator.
I want to be an empowering person for young graduates.
Welcome back to Creative Behind the Influence. I'm Jenny Quigley-Jones, the CEO of Digital Voices, and we're here joined today with Madeleine Borge, who is pretty phenomenal as a creator. At only 22 years old, you've got over 750,000 subscribers. You've had nearly 18 million views online, with over 100,000 people on Instagram, over 100,000 followers on TikTok. You make loads of YouTube shorts, but also you do something you're quite empowering and brilliant with your platform from such a young age. So, how do you see yourself as a creator?
That's a good question. I see myself as a lifestyle content creator. And I started doing this full time this year. And it's been a big change because I was always a student. I always had social media on the side from my student life, my uni life, my high school life, whatever. And now I see myself as this lifestyle content creator who posts stuff about my day-to-day, but I want to be an empowering person for young graduates who are trying to find their way in life, a reference point for people trying to sort out their life in a young age, in their early 20s, trying to find out what they want to do, where they want to live, all that stuff. So I try to be almost like an older sister or reference person for a lot of young people in their early 20s.
So the pseudonym, so Macerly.
Yeah.
Did you decide that very purposefully when you were young? Did your parents decide it? Did you?
No, it was so random because there was MacBarbie07 and I was I want my name to be something similar. So I was Macerly, Macerly. Ooh, Macerly, that sounds fun. And that was it. That was how I chose it. It was really random.
And then it defined a decade.
Yeah. And now people come up to me on the street and they're like, "You're Macerly." And I'm like, "Yeah, I am."
Do you find it weird when people call you your real name? When they meet you on the street?
Not really. Especially lately, in the past 4 years, I've thought a lot about changing my name, ended up changing my username, and I've decided not to because I think it represents such a big era of my life and so many people know me as that name. But I have begun introducing myself as Maddie in recent years because I think, it's nice for people to know me by my real name and not just the username. But it's not weird. It's always super nice. I love when people come up. It's the nicest thing ever,
And given you've shared so much of your personal life, so Theo, your boyfriend's in a lot of your content, do you ever feel there's a line of how much you want to share or a line you don't want to cross?
Yeah, it's difficult because I am a lifestyle, day in the life type influencer. And so it's been difficult trying to set that line. But I feel even though I do days in the life, I share a lot of personal stuff, there's still a line that I don't cross. But it's hard to see probably if you're looking from the outside in because it looks like I'm sharing everything. There's a lot of stuff I don't choose to share, even though it might not look like it.
No, that's an art form.
Yeah, because it's I do days in the life, but I don't share everything that I do that day. I specifically select certain things that I do and I want to share, and then the rest of it is not shared.
So what's that line for you?
It's for example, personal relations with friends. I don't share a lot of my friends, and a lot of people would probably assume that I don't have that many friends, or maybe I don't know, something like that, because I don't share my friends because there are friends from uni, there are friends who aren't influencers, who didn't choose that life. And so I try to keep that private and I don't put them in the videos actively. And if I do, it's random stuff or maybe they're at my dinner and I'm filming the table and that's it, So I try to keep those relationships out of the picture. Also, Theo's often in my videos, but I never really talk about our relationship other than it's very good and we live together and we have a lot of fun and we travel together, but I never talk about that actively, if that makes sense. Share personal stuff about it, for example.
Have you learned that from negative experiences in the past? Have you crossed lines that you've been oh, I shouldn't have done that and seen reactions?
Not really, but I just think it's something that I just never wanted to share in the first place. Because I feel the older I got, the more I started sharing. So when I was super young, I only did DIY content, study tips content. And then gradually I started vlogging more and more. But I would only share, when I was vlogging, I would share, it would mostly be a theme around studying. So I wouldn't share that much of my life. I would selectively choose to say, today I did this, today I did that. And this is how I feel about it. But I wouldn't talk about an argument that I had with my friend, all that kind of stuff. It was always selectively. And then as I grew older, now that I'm doing this full time and vlogging my daily life is like my full-time job, I still kind of do that, although I share a bit more, but there's still that line that I don't cross.
I feel like online audiences, partly because of the way they feel they have a relationship with you, they often get polarized very quickly or can turn against someone if you do talk about like relationship issues, or if you ever talk about like arguments or friend things. There can be so much drama from your audience, and often it feels like it comes from a very good place because they just care about you. But I think it can be quite damaging for people's personal relationships.
And I think that, you know, like I have my personal life and I have my YouTube life and I film my day to day, so it's hard to separate them. But I think it's very healthy to try to separate them at your best ability, you know, and that's how I do it. So I have my little personal life and I have my YouTube life. And if I try to separate them at least a little bit by not sharing the stuff that goes on in that personal life, and then I have my like other life that's like fun on social media and I share that instead, it kind of makes it more like easy to be a full-time creator.
So you talk a lot about female empowerment, and I think like you've done a lot of content that, as that big sister persona you talked about, is really looks out for especially younger female audiences. So you've worked with the Gates Foundation.
Yeah.
You've done a lot about like period talk in schools, which is not talked about. I even went to an all-girls school and we never talked about it.
Yeah, that's so bad.
And you talked about scarring as well, like your scar.
Yeah, vaccine scars. Yeah, I did a big collaboration with the Gates Foundation about vaccines and helping girls get vaccines and helping people in third world countries get vaccines as well. So that was that.
You're so cognizant of your ability to affect change and your ability to use that platform. It's a very mature perspective for someone who was doing this through school.
Yeah.
So where did that like sense of social responsibility and like understanding of like gender politics, where did that all come from?
I don't know. I think it was always a topic, especially in my family. It's been very like pro girls, like girl power. We need to talk about this stuff always. I grew up in a family that like values that women should, you know, be able to work, and they recognize that there is disparity in this world and that women, there's differences between men and women. And sadly, that leads to, you know, like the gender pay gap, for example, and period poverty. And there's all these things that like go against women, which is so sad. And so we need to empower women and we need to know all this.
So was it always a kind of conversation in your family?
Yeah. And my parents were always very open about that kind of thing as well, that like there are disparities and the world is not against women, but it's more difficult for women than it is for men. And so I always grew up with that knowledge and that perspective as a woman. And so I always knew that, you know, I needed to look out for other women and I needed to tell them about these differences, and that, you know, you'll see that through all my comments in terms of like the period poverty talks and the inadequate vaccine delivery, for example. And even now there's a gap between how many people invest and how many women invest, you know? And in the UK, it's horrible. It's really, really bad. Also in terms of businesses, you'll see that like the amounts of businesses who are female founded or have a female CEO who get funding is nothing compared to men. It's ridiculous. It's like 2% or something.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say.
It's crazy. And this is something that I've like, I read it and then I'm like, damn it, we need to do something about this. And I always try to not lecture, but like educate my followers about this, because it's something that I think is bad and we need to talk about it and we need to make people aware. Yeah.
So I run Digital Voices and I'm a sole female founder.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting because you look at, despite the fact over 70% of the people who monetize their content are women in this industry, the people at the top, particularly in the UK, are male-run companies or multiple male founder-run companies.
Always.
And it's
really
see it
everywhere as well. It's crazy. Just look around. Like
you look around and you're like, oh, okay, so this industry runs on female consumers, female content creators, and then you get to the top and there's not that representation.
Old male and stale.
So I was saying to, I was talking to some of my friends who work in the industry, and I was like, the male founders we meet just get recommended by their friends for jobs.
Yeah.
And kind of what you need to like coach other women to do is like, hey, if you know a female founder, or if you know any founder from any disadvantaged background, like shout about them and start introducing them. I think we're very much aware of listening to each other and empathizing with each other. But the part that's missing is often like that bold taking action for other disadvantaged people or disadvantaged groups, or recommending them or introducing. And that's the part that financially is empowering and useful.
Yeah.
Well, empathy is great to an extent, but like, I don't need anyone else to put me on a female founder list or to tell me like, what a good job I'm doing. I'm like, yeah, I appreciate that, but can you just introduce me to the people who are making decisions in this space? And I think the first step is talking about it and the second is taking action. So I think it's phenomenal that you're using your platform to talk about it.
But it's so important also. And I see as well, like, I did this video about investing, because investing is something that I started investing because there was a campaign about like the investment gap in terms of women and men. And I was like, we need to do something about this. I'm going to start investing and I'm going to start posting about it. And then I get all these comments of girls saying, I've never seen anyone who's a girl talk about investing before, because it's always these guys on YouTube, on TikTok, whatever. It's always guys.
Crypto bros.
Yeah, literally, finance bros, whatever. Graham, Stefan, like all these guys are great, but there's no girls talking about it, or at least not on my feed. So if I can be that one person who talks about it, who's a woman, who's a girl, then maybe other women will see that and be like, oh, maybe I should start doing that. What is an ISA? Oh, actually, I should look into that, you know?
Yeah. I'm entirely with it. It's really interesting because I think on TikTok there have been a few that have come up on my feed.
Yeah.
But definitely not on YouTube, and definitely not people who make lifestyle content.
Yeah.
I feel like, and that's where the empowering, shifting the conversation is. If you know the information you're seeking out on finance, you will find that information, you're already, if I know what an ISA is, I will know that the annual limit and I will find the best place to put that. But if you don't even know what you should be searching for, you need a lifestyle creator to at least drip feed the idea of it into you. So do you get a lot of comments of people talking about, who have never heard someone talk about period poverty or talking about investment?
Yeah. Totally. A lot of people, especially girls, are like, oh, I've never seen anyone on my feed talk about this, or I've never seen a girl talk about this. And, I didn't know, but what is an ISA? Wait, how can I find out more information about this? Can you do a video on this? Can you do a video on that? Because they don't know, because no one ever told them. And that's why it's so important, especially as like a woman creator who reaches a very, like my audience is like 85% female. It's so important to show that, you know?
Yeah. And how do you find, so do you use YouTube Shorts as a format a lot to kind of deep dive into these topics so people can opt in if they want to?
Yeah, I think I use YouTube Shorts, and I often use the same types of short videos, and I post them to TikTok and YouTube Shorts because it's like a great platform for both of them. The videos are quite similar. And then, you know, if the video does really well, sometimes I'll do a longer format video on YouTube. So people who are interested and want to learn more can go into my YouTube channel and watch that whole video.
Yeah. It's fascinating because you are so cognizant of your power, which at 22, I don't think I felt like cognizant of my power in any way. And it feels like you've known it since you were 13. I don't know where this came from.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's something you learn along the way, maybe. I've been a creator for so long and I've learned things very slowly, but because I've been doing it for so long and it's been a part of my life for so long, and I'm such a geek about strategy and numbers and all those things, that I think it's just slowly become parts of my my knowledge, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So when you first started talking about like period poverty, how did your audience react?
That's a good question, because I was so young when I started talking about this. But I think I did it in a very natural way. I remember I told my first period story. I told stories about when I would get my period in school. I told all those stories. And that was something that felt natural to 14-year-old girls who also watched my content. And so it's a very natural segue into topics like period poverty, for example. And then at that time when I was like 16, 17, that's when I started working with the Gates Foundation. And they introduced me to a few people. And we talked together and they educated me almost a bit about like these topics. And then that made me more able to communicate that to my followers. And so there was never a bad reaction, because periods are something that girls between the ages of 12, and 16 can relate to, because they just got their periods as well. And so kind of communicating in that way where I tell my story, I can tell someone else's story, I can tell this story, telling my story and then telling the story about period poverty, for example, or telling the story of other things relating to periods.
Yeah.
That's a good way to segue into it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And it's fascinating because the Gates Foundation do not do much with influencers.
Yeah.
They are.
And I was so young when they reached out, which is crazy. Like I must have been 16, and they were like, "We want to work with you, and we want you to meet Melinda Gates." And I was like, "What?"
That's like, I mean, It's like dream brand deal. Everyone talks about like you worked with us on brand deals, but like everyone talks
crazy.
about Surfshark VPN, but like the Gates Foundation is huge.
Yeah. So I met the PM and I met Melinda and we talked about women empowerment, which is insane for a 16-year-old. But at that time I was like, let's do it. Like, let's go. And I wanted to show that to my audience, and the video ended up doing super well as well.
Yeah, it's one of your top performing videos.
Yeah, it has like over 1 million views or something. And that was a video about periods and a video about, you know, there was this girl that I met who was a grandma, or she was a grandma
At 28.
At 28 because she had a child super young, and then her child had a child super young. But that was really important to communicate to my followers, and so many people reacted to that story because I could tell a story and I could tell the issues relating to that and what we need to do in the world in terms of helping those women to avoid those kind of situations, you know.
And how do you feel about how influencers should best, or I don't know if you would use the word influencers, maybe creators, should best partner with causes or charities that they love?
I think it's very important that it's something that relates to you or you are passionate about. And I've always been like passionate about female empowerment. That's something that's always been super important to me. And so when I worked with the Gates Foundation for the second time, for instance, we did a whole thing about vaccines, and I wanted to angle that in, my angle on that kind of content was female empowerment, because that was the way that I could best communicate it to my audience. That was something that I was super passionate about, and I learned so many stories, and I asked so many questions through that collaboration on female empowerment, because I wanted to hear those aspects of it, and that helped me educate my audience and make the best possible video that I could make.
So you had this big non-profit come to you and a cause that they believed in, and then you pushed back creatively to assert how you wanted to address that topic.
Yeah, so we had a whole theme for the whole campaign or collaboration, and then I wanted to go at it from my angle, which was female empowerment, and I wanted to talk about the areas of the big theme that would apply to female empowerment. So when we did the trip, we went to Ghana, to Accra. And then throughout the video, when I asked questions, when I talked to the team, when I talked to the women that we met, for example, I would ask questions that would make me able to take that angle, basically.
I mean, it's really clever, because I think a lot of creators don't quite know how to approach charity or ethical topics. I think some keep very quiet on anything political, ethically linked. We just did a campaign with getting young people to register to vote in the US. And luckily it could be entirely non-partisan, because it could be like, whoever you vote for, make sure you're registered to vote. But it was really interesting seeing some creators really shy away from the topic, even though it was so non-controversial.
Yeah.
And I think it takes a lot of maturity and confidence to know which angle you want to come at it from.
Yeah. Especially
when you have so many brand opportunities.
Yeah, but that's where you have to look at your values, you know? And for me, female empowerment has always been such a big value and something that's so, so important to me. And so when I got this collaboration, I was like, well, that's the natural angle for me, because something that I already am passionate about, I've already talked about. And so it's a natural extension to what I'm already saying and posting.
You must have been on the top of the world getting to work with the Gates Foundation.
Yeah, it was so crazy. But as I said, I was so young. I when I got the collab, I was like, what? That's crazy. But also, why did they choose me? You know, I'm just this 16-year-old Norwegian creator who happens to make videos in English, and then they wanted to work with me. But yeah, it was really, really cool. And still, I'm in contact with them sometimes, and we talk, and they're a really nice team. And it's so cool that I've gotten to work with them, because I know it's a very rare occurrence.
To work with them and to travel the world, that's pretty phenomenal.
Yeah.
It's brilliant.
Yeah.
So you talk about radical transparency, especially in terms of finances.
Yes.
So you are very open about what you spend and how you invest. I saw you invest, sometimes you invest nearly £900 a month. I was so impressed.
Yeah.
So how did you come to a place where you wanted to share that much information? Because it does open you up to a lot of criticism.
100%, yeah. And both ways also. It's it's either you spend too much or you invest too much. And then it's the other way is oh, why do you do this? Why don't you do this? I have an advice for you. And then it's all very complicated. I will get both sides. And then, when you post anything money related, you'll get, that's your daddy's money or something like that, So you open yourself up to a lot of criticism. But this year, after uni, I wanted to post more finance related stuff. And I was thinking about how can I make this easily digestible for, 20-year-olds. And a good way to do it, a trend that's really popular online, is how much I spend. So I would do how much I spend in a day. And that, that's a really easy thing to do. And it doesn't really tell you a lot about finances, but I extended upon that by doing what I spend in a month. And I would go through how I spend my money, what I spend on my rent, why it's less than probably other people would spend because I share one bed, we live small, all those things. And then extending on that again, I would post how much I saved, how much I invested. And it was a really natural entry for a lot of people to learn about how other people spend their money and why it's important to invest and why it's important to save and how I do it. And then people would ask me questions, you know, how do you save? How do you like save for your mortgage? How do you save for your pension? How do you save for like putting your money into an ISA? All these questions. So I did it kind of gradually by hopping onto a trend and then kind of adapting that trend to fit what I wanted to say.
And opening up that forum for discussion.
Exactly.
Again, you're so cognizant of where you want to position yourself before you even create a video, which is, it's a very mature perspective. It's not like you've just fallen into doing
nothing
TikTok
is random.
It's very strategic.
Yeah.
So when you get comments like, oh, it's your dad's money.
Yeah.
How, as like a self-funded full-time creator, does that make you feel?
Annoyed. And I get those comments all the time, like once a day at least. And when I post what I spend, what I invest videos, it annoys me especially on the what I invest videos, because I'm like, here I am trying to make smart decisions as a woman who's earning her own salary in her 20s. And then I get like, that's your daddy's money. That's your parents' money. Or that's your boyfriend's money. And I'm like, guys, we split the rent. Like, what are you on? But
I'm open about this. We split the rent and it's
like how I save for my mortgage. And then it's like, that's your boyfriend's money. And I'm like, no, it's not. It's my money. Yeah. But anyway, like there's nothing you can do about it. I think I've spoken to other influencers as well. And I think in terms of hate comments, in terms of getting these kinds of comments, it's nice to have other creator friends because they will tell you, oh, you're not alone. I get that all the time. And so it's nice to have that reference point. And I know the people that comment that, they're people who get my video randomly on their feed. And that's, you know, that's what happens when you go viral or you do a video that goes into people's feed and you grow, you get comments like that. You reach men who are just angry with life and decide that they want to comment that daddy pays all your money or your rent or whatever. But there's nothing you can do about it. But obviously it's a bit annoying. But
do you correct them in the comments just so that your audience see that you correct them? Or do you stop yourself?
Honestly, I did that in the beginning, but I think it did more harm than good. Not necessarily to like the comment section, but I would get very, not anxious about it, but I would feel like, what if they or if they're going to be angry with me? You know, like I would get scared about that and be like, what if I started a negotiation in the comment section? Like, you know, so now I either just don't read it or I scroll past it or I delete it if it's like a really rude comment or something. But there's so much of it that you just have to kind of ignore it. Obviously, it's a bit annoying, but the followers who follow me, who've been following me for a while, know that I earn my own money, and those are the people who I care about. So there's not really any point to caring about those random men in the comment section.
It's funny, I think it happens a lot when they see a young woman talking about money. It's always the assumption you must have had help to get there. Yeah. We actually had an ex-employee who said that to my dad, which was really weird. So it was at the company Christmas party, and he's quite a senior person. And they said to my dad, like, oh, you must have helped her start the company.
Yeah. But it's always
my dad, like, sent me a text and was like, I found that so chauvinistic and offensive because you did everything. Yeah. Started your company on like £500 and I wouldn't have known how to help you if I had. And it is the type of thing where it's like, no matter how confident you are, it like cuts you to your core because you're like, no matter what I do, the way I visually present means people will always think that my money comes from a man.
And if I were a guy posting about finance or investing, I wouldn't get this. But because I'm a girl and I post about this, I get this. And that's the annoying part, is what we talked about earlier. And that's why I think I was always so annoyed at these comments, because I look through a lot of hate comments every day and I don't care. But when it comes to that and people looking down on me because, or not even looking down, but assuming that I can't even pay my own bills or my own rent, because a man must do that for me, that goes to my like value of female empowerment. And I just get really annoyed. But you just have to look past it.
It's funny as well, because you studied business management. Yeah. I can't imagine you going into being a full-time content creator without a business plan.
Yeah. Yeah, I did finance and economics in school, and people just, I don't know. Okay. Doesn't matter.
So what is the one impact you want to have as a creator?
I want to be a good influence on people, on young women especially. That's really important to me. That's why I always do this female empowering type content. And you'll see that in my day-to-day videos. Like it's always very positive. It's always very happy. And I try to be a happy force in people's day and something that they can look forward to, a video they can look forward to, because either it helps them in some way or it's relatable in some way, or they feel happy watching that video in some way. That's really, really important to me. And so when I traveled, for example, it would be fun videos you could look forward to every day from me just traveling the world, and maybe inspiration, because I was traveling Southeast Asia.
As by yourself as well?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Awesome.
And I met up with people along the way. It was really nice. But yeah, that was an inspiration for a lot of people, because I've always been so scared of traveling alone. Like I've gone back and forth to Norway alone, but I've never traveled outside Europe alone, for example. And so I pushed myself to do that. And I think a lot of people texted me afterwards and were like, I want to do that as well, because you did it. And that's something that, for me felt really empowering, because a young woman traveling alone to Asia is not that normal. But I did it. And now other people want to do it as well. And that's really nice. But also like them seeing that, daily update from my travel and seeing something nice and happy, and me just sharing some really cool experience that I had in India, for example, or in the Philippines, for example, was important, because maybe not necessarily would be applicable for them, but at least they had something happy and fun to look forward to that day.
Yeah. I think you've really considered this, and I'm so impressed with the way you approach your content.
Thank you.
Such like a fundamentally philosophical way. It's brilliant.
Yeah, but that wasn't always the case. Like I grew up on social media, so I think it's been a slow process. And if you're just starting out and you're like, oh my God, I have to go through this, like a business plan, and I have to plan out all this stuff, like, don't worry about it, like you'll find your way. This has been I wouldn't say evolution, but like evolutionary process. I've been doing it for so long, and I've slowly figured out what my social media personality, if you will, is, what I want to post online and how I want to do it. And that's where I am right now. But that's been years in the making.
Do you see yourself being a full-time content creator in another decade?
That's also a good question, and something I've considered so much ever since I graduated, because I've done this for a year, and this year wasn't like a year where I was like, now I'm going to be a full-time creator forever. It was a year where I was like, I'm going to try and we'll see what happens. And what I found is that I love the job, and I think it gives me so much flexibility. And I want to say that I'm so privileged to have this job, because I know so many people who don't like their job, their first job after uni. So many of my friends are not happy in their job and they want to switch and whatnot. And so I'm happy in my job and I really love it. And I'm so fortunate that I can have that as my job. Yeah. But also I love it, but I think I want to do more in terms of I want to have something on the side, either that being a business or that being a part-time job or that being, something else. It's super strange, because I went from always having YouTube or social media as my part-time thing to having it as my full-time thing. Now that it is my full-time thing, I'm missing that part-time thing.
Yeah.
It's really difficult, but I love it so much, and it's been an amazing year. And I would definitely continue doing it, but I want to find something that I can do on the side as well to fulfill me and give me even more, because I feel like I love it, but I want something on the side.
I think the happiest content creators that I've personally known are people who have a way of compartmentalizing away from it.
Yeah.
Because then it inspires them to do it part-time. Exactly. And then the other thing they do, they can switch off.
Yeah.
And I think it must be really creatively hard to try and create that structure like you have with your office and your assistant full-time.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah,
I would love to have something like, for example, I redid my bedroom recently before we got kicked out of the flat. But I redid my bedroom recently and I loved it. And I had so much fun doing it. And it was so easy for me to create content around it, because I'm a creative person, and I was painting my drawer and I was putting up pictures and I was redoing the bed and everything. And that was something that I loved, and I could also do social media.
Yeah.
And that wasn't a project that I was paid for or anything. Like I literally redid my own bedroom. But I think having something, either me like being an interior decorator and helping someone else out, having that as a side business, and then I could film it. I've seen people do that on social media and it's so cool. Or even having my own business, like a little business, consulting business, something like that. And then I can have that and then also be an influencer or a content creator around it. Is something that I think would be my ideal situation.
Hey, you could train to be a financial advisor.
Yeah.
Be a female financial advisor. It would be great.
Yeah, like something that is just another thing. And that's, I'll still post my daily content and everything, but I have something on the site as well.
It gives you a diversity of thought, I think.
Exactly.
And your brain will just work in a different way for it.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Awesome. Thank you so much, Maddie, for being here today and having a chat with us and sharing all your expertise and life tips. If you have any comments, please ask Maddie questions below. We'll send some over and tell you.
Yes.
And if you want to follow for any more other interviews like this with creators, please subscribe.